Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books. And especially today, I want to talk about basically interpretations of the Iliad in the form of these two books. The first is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and then The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. So these are two retellings of the Iliad. I've been meaning to do a dedicated video to these two books, even though I did talk about them in my April wrap-up, I believe. Because one, I've been seeing more and more of these reinterpretations of classics, especially of these Greek epics, and I teach a class on the classics today. So I thought I could share some thoughts with you all. So first of all, the story that these books I'll be talking about today reinterpret is the story of the Iliad. So if you're not familiar with the Iliad, if you've never read it, it is part of our pop culture, especially here in the US, I feel like. This is the huge version of it. This is like the full translation of it by Robert Fagles. I have read most of this. There are parts that are like easily skippable, but you can see I have it all tabbed up. But there is a shorter version of it that I do use in my classes, and that's the Essential Iliad, translated and edited by Stanley Lombardo. There is a more recent translation of it that was translated by a woman that I want to get my hands on, but for now these are the ones that I can recommend. This one especially because it takes out a lot. But all right, let's talk about what's in the story of the Iliad. So it is the story of the Trojan War. But when the Iliad begins, you're already in the middle of a war. It's been years since it started, where they're engaged in siege warfare. The Greeks have surrounded Troy, but Troy has been holding on really, really well. And neither side is really like gaining much. Right? This is the story largely of Achilles. Achilles is the hero of this epic. He is part god, part human, and the legends we have received of him is that he's like indestructible. He cannot be killed, except for the one weakness points he has, the Achilles heel. That you don't get that from the Iliad, so that you get from other stories. In the Iliad, he's just part god, part human. His mom is a goddess, and she is deeply involved in here. Now, the problem with the story of the Iliad is that in order to really be a hero, to really achieve legend status, you have to, spoiler alert, die. That's not really a spoiler. Hopefully everybody knows Achilles does die. But anyways, it's actually a really good story. But I find that a lot of people are gravitated to these stories because they like kind of violence, conflict, warfare stories. And I feel like there is so much more to the Iliad than just that. And that is what these books help bring out and highlight out of the Iliad. So let's start with the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This one focuses on Achilles and his romantic relationship with Patroclus. Patroclus is in the original story, and scholars have interpreted that relation as having been a romantic homosexual relationship, right? And she really takes us through all right, let's just dig into that element of it. And go back further and examine their relationship from the very beginning, right? So she is reimagining the whole story through the eyes of Patroclus. We start off with his point of view because the way he ends up meeting Achilles is because he's a prince. Patroclus is a prince, and he accidentally kills another kid, and so then he's essentially exiled from his kingdom and sent over to Achilles' kingdom. Achilles' dad takes him in. Right, and so then we begin seeing them as children, growing up together, and developing a friendship, and eventually a romantic relationship. Then she takes us through the setting of the Iliad, so into the Trojan War, and then the end of Achilles, right? So his death, and then and Patroclus' death, right? And it is a really, really beautiful story. I have to admit that when I read the Iliad, Achilles is a total asshole. Like, excuse my language. Achilles is not very likable in the Iliad from a modern perspective. He is everything a hero should be, so it means he's very full of himself to the point, though, where he doesn't really think of others. The only person that can get through him in the Iliad, the only person he really seems to care about is Patroclus. So the way Miller reimagines it all through Patroclus's eyes really made me sympathize a lot more with Achilles and see more of his human side, basically, rather than like the god and the hero. Right? I really enjoyed it for that. The way she develops the romance to me also felt really, really beautiful because you start off with them as kids, and so she doesn't just dump them into a sexual romantic relationship. It's like a slow burn romance, and that I really liked that aspect of it. I also like the way she talks about war in here as something that neither Patroclus or Achilles is especially wanting to do. Like in this story, Achilles has doubts, and I think that this is where seeing him as more of a human than a god is really reflected in this. He doesn't want to fight, especially if it's going to mean his death. But here's the thing, in order to be a hero, to be a legend, to be remembered, death is part of the story, and so it is a very real choice, and we see Achilles struggling with that choice here. Now, a few things that I didn't like as much in this story was the way Patroclus is portrayed in battle. He's basically portrayed as a weakling. He can't fight. He doesn't have a whole lot of skills there, and he relies entirely on Achilles for his survival in battle. And I thought that that was very odd. We don't get a lot of Patroclus in the Iliad, so it's like perfectly legit to interpret him that way. But Patroclus does at one point kill the son of a god. He kills Zeus's son. So I don't know. I just felt like putting him in, making him that much more vulnerable. I don't know. Might not have been entirely necessary. Just as an FYI. So, but I really enjoyed it. I really recommend it. It is because for most of the story, you're seeing it through the eyes of young adults, Patroclus and Achilles. It is one that I think young adults would really, really love, and a little bit easier to read also as an adult. All right, let's move on to Pat Barker's The Silence of the Girls. This is, again, a reinterpretation of the Iliad, and this one is true through Briseis' eyes. So in the original story of the Iliad, Briseis is a Trojan princess. Yeah, kind of princess. She's an aristocrat, and she is captured in a raid by the Greeks. Then she is she's gifted, essentially. She becomes Achilles' war prize. And so she is a symbol of like all of the honor that is due of a hero in a Greek war, right? Like she represents honor and respect that is owed to Achilles. So, all right, let's look at it through her eyes, because women in the Iliad hardly ever show up. They are there, but we don't get their point of view, and they're more of like a tool in that story. So when you reinterpret that story to focus on it through these women's eyes, you get a much more raw interpretation of the story. Like the fact that these women are war prizes, like is a hint that they're going to undergo sexual assault. Like they're not choosing a sexual relationship with these Greek men that have captured them. It's rape. And so you do see that here. So major trigger warnings for sexual assault and rape here. But like it's not, because we're seeing it through her eyes, and we're seeing it through through the eyes of a society in which this is expected. The women know that this is happening, and it happens, right? I didn't feel it was excessively graphic or gratuitous, though. I felt it was handled with some care. I really love the way the beginning of The Silence of the Girls starts. So it starts with great Achilles, brilliant Achilles, shining Achilles, godlike Achilles, how the epithets pile up. We never called him any of those things. We called him the butcher. That encapsulates to me what most of this story is about. Achilles is this like weird figure in The Silence of the Girls because he does drive a lot of the plot, because it follows the narrative of the Iliad. We're just through a different character's eyes, right? But Achilles is still central to that story. But through the eyes of Briseis, he's not a good guy. He's not a hero. He's not somebody to be worshipped. He is a captor, the source of violence and pain, and that is not anything to be worshipped. And I really appreciated that take here. I have to admit, though, I've never really liked Achilles, as I said before. So actually, it highlights how great of a job Miller did in kind of humanizing him in the Song of Achilles, because I don't tend to like Achilles very much, and he doesn't come through in a good light here either. Except, so here's the one thing about The Silence of the Girls is that the specter of Achilles is always there, and he gets a few chapters that we get through. We get a few chapters through his eyes in here. And there's a shift in Briseis' attitude towards Achilles in the book. I am not going to give anything away, but there's a shift. And that shift I found problematic, but not unrealistic, right? Because I want to keep this spoiler free, I don't want to go into it, but I think there's a little bit of Stockholm syndrome that might be going on in here. But anyways, I have so much. There's just so much. This book is very beautifully written because I think Barker has a deep understanding of what the life of women was like in the Greek world, which is difficult, not entirely powerless, but women's lives were, the framework within which women could act was dictated by men. Within that framework, though, women are thriving and making lives and doing the best they can, and actually doing really well in some instances and not so well in others. And so we see a whole range of the female experience in Barker's book, which I loved. I'm like, that was a 5-star book for me. And the Song of Achilles was like a 4.75. Right? So yeah, I am really loving this trend of reinterpreting these Greek classics. I probably want to do the same with the Odyssey and with the Aeneid. There's a few reinterpretations of those that I'm interested in taking a look at. I also need to read Miller's Circe. That's coming up on my TBR. But I wanted to offer for those of you that maybe you've come across this video and you're interested in further interpretations of the Iliad, or Greek stories that might be a little bit different than this, but related. Like one that I haven't yet read, but I'm planning on reading soon, so keep an eye out for a review of this one, is Oh My Gods by Alexandra Shepherd. It's about a teenage girl who finds out that she's the daughter of gods. And I believe it's set in modern time, in London, and this is such a beautiful cover, and it sounds really cute, and this is next on my list. But if you're not aware that this book exists, now you are. So a few other things in terms of interpretations of the Iliad that I think are accessible to a lot of people. One is Memorial, a version of Homer's Iliad by Alice Oswald. So this is a super short really easy to get through book, but if you're into poetry, this is going to be your interpretation of the Iliad. What Oswald does is she is creating a memorial for all the deaths that occur in the Iliad. So it's focused entirely on death and the individuals who died in poetry form. And there are pages in which you just get like the list of names, because that's what happens in the Iliad. Like, other than the big heroes in the Iliad, you don't get to hear anybody else's stories, right? So this is why I love The Silence of the Girls and The Song of Achilles. A couple of other essays that I find really, really brilliant as interpretations of the Iliad can be found in this book. So you can find these separately, like if you Google them, you'll find them. But I found a book that brought them together. So this is War in the Iliad, Simone, Weil, and Rachel Bespaloff, with an introduction by Christopher Benfey. So Simone Weil wrote her interpretation of the Iliad. It's called The Iliad, or the Poem of Force, during World War II. And she was a member of the French Resistance, and so she reads the Iliad during this period, and then writes this essay in which she just like basically rips apart the theme of heroism and war in the Iliad. Like, Homer presents war as heroic, and she responds with this essay saying, no, there are no heroes here. It's brilliant. I love it. And then Rachel Bespaloff is also writing during World War II. And hers is called On the Iliad. What she does differently, though, is she finds heroes here, but she also does not think that Achilles is the hero of or should be read as the hero of the Iliad. For her, it's Hector. And Hector, if you're not familiar with the story of the Iliad, is basically the Trojan hero, the Achilles equivalent in Troy. He is their main hero, greatest warrior. He is a prince. He is everything a hero should be. And like Achilles, he's fighting for something, right? Like in all of these stories, they all make very clear that Achilles is fighting for honor and glory. He joined the war not because he was insulted or something was done to him or his people. No, it's for honor and glory. Hector, on the other hand, Bespaloff tells us he's fighting for survival. He's fighting to protect his community, his kingdom, his wife, his son, and she finds that is the heroic element. And I love assigning these things to my students and talking about it. So if you've read any of these, let me know down below and we can chat more on it. But so these are some of the kind of information and books I have on the Iliad and interpretations of the Iliad. Again, I think The Silence of the Girls and The Song of The Silence of the Girls and The Song of Achilles are really excellent interpretations. And if there are others out there that you want to tell me about, please do, because I'm going to have time to read some this summer. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.